Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tali. I am the director of the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center and will be your program director tonight. With me is my colleague, hiding, my colleague, the CEO of Liliesleaf, Nick Wolpe, that is the Liliesleaf and Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center partner in this series, Memory and Legacy, and tonight is part of this series. I would like to welcome all of you to today's Memory and Legacy panel on what do we remember, reflecting on the roles of Jewish people in the liberation struggle. Many of you were present here throughout our series that started in January, where we concentrated on different issues of memory, writing memory, filming memory. Today's panel is extremely important because what do we remember when we look back? So, the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center, Liliesleaf, Trust.
Thank you for taking the time out to join us here this evening on a topic which I remember was first raised back in the late 90s by Steve Friedman. I remember being at a small discussion group and the question of, so to just end, the objective tonight and going forward is to create the conditions and the environment in which we do not lose sight of our struggle, we do not lose sight of the meaning of that struggle, and we do not allow it to fade. Because it is a real possibility. And I just would like to end by telling you a short story about how I delivered a paper in Liverpool on...
It doesn't go into my 7 minutes, but I think it's quite important where this originated. Myself and Nick were sitting in Mangaun, experiencing democracy at its best or worst, it depends who you were. We were sitting in Mangaun watching. We were both actually at Polokwane, and we often have these discussions. forget what happened, our children's biggest danger is of them not knowing what we went through and what our parents or grandparents who fought in the struggle. But tonight's not really about that. Tonight's really more about the Jews who fought in the struggle, and I'm on the panel not for that because I was too young to fight in the struggle, but very much how the attitude towards the organised Jewish community was to the Jewish government, a government that was so disgusting to the majority of its people in South Africa, is a debate. And I'm happy to have that a bit later. I'll tell you what people have told me, the current leadership. But where there's no excuse is how we treated the Jews who fought in the struggle. As the Jewish Board of Deputies, we let our own people down by not fighting for them. And I still remember Colin Coleman telling us of his mother. I think I was one of the first communal leaders she spoke to, because that is our mandate. The mandate of the Jewish Board and our organisation was to help and protect the South African Jews, which we didn't do. Whether we were too cosy with the apartheid government, my personal view is it was what I've read about it. I just think they enjoyed that relationship too much. But I also think, and this was one of the discussions myself and Nick had in Mangun, also think the TRC, which was
Tell them the year, Dennis. In 1933, celebrating 80 this year. In 1954, he became a member.
So, Zeb, I'd like to hear the apology to the mass of South African people who were dealt with brutally, with indignity, denied their rights as human beings. That's the apology that's needed from the collective. However you does to us, but not to the people who really suffered, and of which we were either tolerant or apathetic to the fight against that situation of gross inhumanity. So I would like to say to you, the past is the past and we need to learn from it. We need to learn that we have overcome apartheid in the formal sense, and there's a hell of a lot to do now to make it possible to build a new South Africa. I know people do some charitable things, but it needs much more. It needs a thinking about our economy. How is it, after all these years, we still have such a gap between masses of low-paid workers and high-paid skilled workers and managers? 2 minutes. You said 5.
After spending 11 years studying and teaching law in England, he worked for a further 11 years in Mozambique as law professor and legal researcher. In 1988, he was blown up by a bomb placed in his car in Maputo by South African security agents, losing an arm and the sight of an eye. After recovering from the bomb, he devoted himself full-time to...
I decided if he was the bad cop, I would be the good cop. If he was the good cop, I'd be the bad cop. He's good and bad, so I'm going to be bad and good. But one little practical detail, the exhibition at the Jewish Museum didn't take place immediately after we returned. the Holocaust and racism in South Africa, then it's failing. Then it's simply abstracting a piece of memory in the past and trying to persuade the majority of South Africans who say, why should we be turned on and excited about events that whites were doing to whites in Europe decades ago when we were suffering in our skin?
Schooling as an agent in defining and reinforcing gender roles. She was a founder member of the Feminist Review. She and Harold also taught at the University of the Western Cape. On her retirement, she established the Harold Wolpe Memorial Trust, which promotes intellectual and theoretical debates on socio-economic issues. All three of their children have returned to South Africa. They live here in Johannesburg and in Cape Town. She is the author of 2 books, the first dealing with Harold's escape from prison in 1963, and a sequel on the life in England that is yet to be published. AnnMarie, the floor is yours.
I think it's a very hard act to
background, the values, the history, previous struggles, previous experiences of racism had anything to do with why Jews on the left took up the positions that they did. If Dennis, for example, would revisit the notion that being Jewish had nothing to do with being
government. For me, the legitimacy of a government is there. And I often say today, because I sit around similar shovers dinner tables, I'm sure Albie Sachs, where they complain about the corruption and that, and I always fight. I fight South Africa. We're into our 20th year of democracy. We've had 4 different presidents. Some went willingly, some went unwillingly. We got a free press. I'm very proud of our young democracy. And not political, it was political, okay, the Hebrew gave a bit extra in jail and you had 1 or 2 friends, but there wasn't supporting the person because he was part of the community, whether he wanted to be part of the community or not. And I think that's, I'm saying, that for me is where the failure came.
All right, then.
Says, what oh, he's ill, he's black, and he's a worker, and he's unemployed. He must be very poor. I understood this as a 6-year-old. So what's the Jewishness got to do? Because my parents were Jewish. Came out of the East End of London. You know, they'd fought the fascists in Britain, where there was strong anti-Semitic behaviour. But they settled in South Africa and were opposed to the apartheid, to the segregation of the time, and were political and support each other. That's the passion of our lives. That's what we went to prison for. Why people were hanged, why people were shot. That's
Okay.
my answer to you.
Thanks, Dennis. Albie, you want to
Yes.
answer both questions?
When I tell the joke that I told myself as I was coming through after the operation, I think many
That's my answer to you.
Thanks, Dennis. Albie, you want to
years.
answer both questions?
I'm at the funeral of Joe Slovo at Orlando. It's packed, it's intense, it's emotional. We're feeling sad and heavy. Fantastic singing. The best speech of all. African speakers are fabulous speakers. The best speech of all was by Cyril Nash, the backup support, that came from that millennial view, millennial view of hope for humanity. And that's but then it means the Jewishness that I like is a Jewishness that's tolerant, that's open, that doesn't tell Richard Goldstone that he can't go to shul. It's a different kind of Jewishness to the way that being a Jew is often interpreted. And I also like chicken soup with knedel. I don't like knedel, I like chicken soup. But organic.
Anything to add?
At the age of 6, I had a stone thrown at my head because I was Jewish. So I've never felt anything other than an alien. And I'm just interested whether that's not the reason for the behavior of that board. And as soon as a new government came in, they had get security.
I'm going to live for South Africa and express myself as a South African. And until we do that, Jewish people will not have a home in South Africa and won't feel that security that we talk about. So I think that journey, Zev has really, and I think he should be lauded, has led the journey of the Jewish community institutionally into the new South Africa. So what I'm hoping personally is that the message from here is, as we integrate into the new South Africa, and we've got lots of problems. The revolution in South Africa was never going to be a clean, pure revolution.
We'll continue. Okay, and there is a question from the back there. So the third question.
Hi, my name's Ilan. Just a question to Zev. You know, you talk about introspection and, you know, bringing out these speakers. And you know, you gave a posthumous award to Arthur Goldberg, which is noble. But what about addressing the real issue that during apartheid, that only very few rabbinic leaders spoke out? And specifically, I know it's a name that's going to cause maybe discomfort in this room, is
one must understand that is the reality of mankind, and mankind is striving, particularly now after the tragedies of the Holocaust, with Darfur and everything happening around us, with Syria, to have the courage and to stand up and to be counted. And I just think, and I'd like your opinion, why are, yes, the Jews throughout Torah should be different, but at the same time we're a people with fears, not justifications, but an understandable, terrifying, harsh reality. I even remember when I was at university, and we were already bucking the system in many ways, there was the unspoken fear if you were caught saying it. It's no excuse, Dennis, but it is a harsh reality of all humankind, not only the Jews, and it's you people that we have to emulate today, where we can live in a truly free country and speak out what we think. And I would just like your opinions on that.
Okay, thank you.
There was no one from the community who came and said, welcome back. We came and there was a blaze of publicity and nothing. So I think that statement is not a fair judgment of what happened.
Zev next, or?
I mean, I think a few, a lady and the professor, you know, it's interesting you say, and Maya, you know, I often think in a lot of ways the Afrikaans community has embraced the new South Africa far better than the Jewish South, you know, the Jewish South Africans. As for another discussion, like, we were always brought up that South Africa was never going to make it. I mean, I'm telling you as a white South African, the average thing was the apartheid government government was unjust, it was never going to survive, and there was no ways the black man was going to run a successful country. So both ways we were doomed. I mean, in the Jewish community, you exchange control, feel like South African Jews, and to take their Torah learning to to South Africa. For me, one of the toughest decisions I made, coming back to the fear, when I was chairman of the Jewish board, was the outbreak of xenophobia. And it came on our desk where people from Africa who had come for a better life had been turned on. I felt very passionate about this. I felt as South Africans, we knew what it was like to be refugees. We knew it, and I pushed very hard to come out with an original statement. I came under a lot of pressure. Oh, they could turn on the Jewish community, could do this, could do that. Well, you know, and I still felt that we had to do it. We came out with a very hard statement, condemning it, and then we got very actively involved. Yes, I mean, as I said, the pressure came on. I just felt that we were experiencing another injustice in our country where we couldn't allow it to go because of fear. And we had to believe in the legitimate, democratically elected government with this police force that it was not only going to protect foreign people from Africa, we're going to protect South Africans who help the foreigners from overseas who are coming for a better life. Which did happen. Nothing happened to the community. The community, for me, it was one of our finest hours. There was a lot of...
To listen, and we constituted a panel that wasn't going to let you guys off the hook easily. And I think it's not just Afrikaners. What about the Greek community? If you get people like George and Luli Kalinikos and others who were taking a stand, you know, and then to pose questions like that. And there could be other sections of the community, and Liliesleaf, of course, is such an emotional and powerful place. It might be worth exploring. And yeah, it'll be a challenge to them.
Great idea. I think we should take it on. Nick?
I was asked, can I?
Dennis, yes, please.
I was asked if I had abstracted myself from the Jewish community. I didn't find anything in common with what was in Cape Town a religious, closed little group of people who had no interest in fellow South Africans other than Jews. And I was accustomed to a home where people who were workers in their dirty clothes, where professors, where doctors, where people of all races and social class came to visit. Those were the interesting people for me. I didn't have time for all the other crap, if I can maybe diplomatic. Am I bitter? No, absolutely not. If you can detect bitterness in me, you're the first person. We won. I will not allow bitterness to eat me from inside so that they win. I do get angry at the misuse of power, as I did during the apartheid era, and as I do now in the post-apartheid era, and speak out very strongly against it. And for my pains get put onto the Integrity Commission of the African National Congress. So I'm not afraid of dissent and of speaking truth to power. You use the phrase. The future out of a discussion like this, I think it's important to recognize that we've been reasonably honest with each other and to acknowledge within ourselves what we individually and collectively need to do. And if, as the suggestion comes, we can be a beacon for other groups, fine. But why stop there? Why not doctors? Why not lawyers? Why not business people? Why not? I mean, they're all part of apartheid and still score out of it and the relations that still exist. There's a big struggle to go on. You asked me, is the struggle against apartheid over? Of course it's not.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the panelists. Seb, thank you for putting yourself on the spot. I know you were outnumbered, and I'm sure you felt like you were at the front of the scrum. AnnMarie, thank you for coming up.
Not scared.
Albie, Dennis, thank you very much for participating. And you as the audience, thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for your questions. I'm sure you will all agree we haven't yet really kind of got